Good afternoon and welcome to a special episode of Kava and Conversation. I am joined today with my guest, Shelly Heijlands from Balear Cosmetics. How are you?
Very good. How are yourself?
Good, thank you. A little bit cold and wet today, but I guess with all the beautiful weather that we generally have, we shouldn't be complaining.
Yeah, we should enjoy the rainy days, isn't it?
Yes, those days that you want to sort of snuggle up and watch a little bit of Netflix and put a duvet up.
Absolutely.
So welcome and tell me a little bit about yourself. You're not originally from Spain.
No, I'm not. So I'm from the Netherlands. I'm actually half Dutch and half German. I was born in Germany, but raised in the Netherlands. So I'm a bit of both, but I would say more Dutch. Actually, I grew up in the Netherlands and lived there my entire life. And after my studies as a beautician, I travel around the world. So I do feel really Dutch, but at the same time, I feel quite international, actually.
I think when we sort of take a look at a lot of the people that do live in Mallorca, for example, it does tend to be a very international community. Nobody is ever really from here. Most people are international people that have done a lot of traveling and have ended up in Mallorca.
Yeah.
Why was it Mallorca that you ended up in?
Well, I was traveling for a few years on cruise ships. I lived in England before. I lived in Switzerland. And when I worked on a cruise ship and then I actually moved to England. And I thought I was ready to settle. And I kind of was, but I think it was more the rainy weather. I think a lot of people can relate with that. I came from the Caribbean on cruise ships, going to England where it was raining. So it was a bit of a... And I felt I wasn't really ready to proper settle down. So then I took the leap to move to Mallorca because my dad actually, he comes often to Mallorca, has a holiday apartment here. So he was like, why don't you try it? It's such an easy destination. You see me more often. So I thought, well, it's nice weather, why not? So I tried it. And when I arrived, I knew it straight away. It was the first place from so many places where I traveled where I felt home. And I think that's the most important thing. I think we can travel around the world, but to feel home somewhere is not always easy because you're constantly on the go, you meet new people, and to really integrate, it can take quite a while. But because Mallorca is so international, I think this was one of the reasons why it's, for me, a very easy place to feel home.
Yeah, and I think you create a community as well because it's very easy to find people that are from either your industry or have worked in the same industry, your age range, your background even. There's always a community here that you're able to sort of fall into rather quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about Balear Cosmetics. It's a new company that you started up.
It is, yeah. So it's basically an on-demand beauty company. What it is. So I serve beauty and spa treatment all around the island, in villas, on yachts, at homes and offices, everywhere really on the island. So I offer manicures, pedicures, facials. I'm very highly specialized and skilled in brow and lash treatments. So I'm next to beside that, I'm a permanent makeup artist. So I work as a microblading artist, which if you don't know what it is, which some people don't because it's quite a new thing, especially here in Spain, it's a form of tattooing for the eyebrows. So semi-permanent makeup, which looks very, very likely like hair. So it's done in a way that it looks similar like hair. So if you have someone with no eyebrow hair or full eyebrow hair, you can do pretty much anything with it. So this is something what I do as well. So I have the on-demand service, beauty service, and then I work in a studio in Santa Ponza where I work as a microblading artist. But it's all within Balear Cosmetics. So it's very, very new, the business, since this season. And we will see where it grows. At the moment, it's an on-demand service, but eventually I'm planning to open a salon.
So I guess this microblading is sort of the trend that's coming up. We had discussed off camera the fact that a few years back, the biggest trend was having these like monster eyebrows. People were painting these things on and literally looked like caterpillars. I have a daughter that was doing it. I used to make fun of her constantly because that's who I am. And but I see that trends have changed from that now. I mean, we're not seeing. I think we called it sort of the Jersey Shore thing, being North America. It was really Jersey Shore, the wrong side of the tracks kind of thing. But we've moved away from that. We're going back to more sort of natural look as far as eyebrows go.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I would have never thought that eyebrows could be such a big thing. It's a whole industry right now. It goes from back in the day where it was very thin eyebrows where we used to overpluck them. I wasn't really born at that time, but I can see that my mom and her friends obviously going to the monster eyebrows, now over to the most natural eyebrows. And within this whole permanent makeup industry, I have to say there are a lot of different styles, and every year there is a new way which comes out. It starts to become how more bold, how better. So how thicker, how more bushy, how more trendy it is at the moment. And it doesn't suit everyone, but I have to say that there are so many things you can offer with it, so many different kind of styles.
Well, I think it's sort of, I mean, the trend nowadays, it sort of reminds me of the Cindy Crawford days when a supermodel was quite real and quite natural. And, you know, she made headlines across the world. She is still known to this very day as being, you know, one of the supermodels of all time. And it really does sort of, that trend does remind me of those days when natural was beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And I was never, I mean, back in the day, when I started my whole study as a beautician, and I mean, permanent makeup was already there for so many years. I was never into it because it wasn't natural. And I like natural styles. I like natural lashes. I don't like the extreme, I wouldn't even know how to call it, but the extreme ones. I like it natural with really everything. So when microblading became a trend and I saw how natural and how perfect it can be done, that's when I got into it and thought, okay, this is something I would like to offer. And I'm very, very happy that nowadays we start to accept things which are more natural, because I think people feel more comfortable with it as well to be natural. It's something which suits everyone and not just one category.
Well, and I mean, for me as well, why would you want to have to spend an hour? I mean, I'm a busy woman. I work, I'm a single parent. And I just don't have time to spend an hour and a half in the mirror every morning to do my makeup. I'm lucky if I've got 5 minutes. So this is it. And I think a lot of women nowadays feel the same. We have sort of transitioned. 20 years ago, women did stay home and you know, look after their families, raise their families. They had more time if they were going out in the evening to take that time. But in today's day and age, we don't have that time. So the ability to be able to get up, have a shower, and take 5 minutes and head out the door, that's more what we're looking for.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's you save a lot of time with having treatments like this. It's not only to feel more beautiful afterwards, it's as well to save the time in the morning and to know that there's something done and you don't have to worry about it. And on top of that, I think going for a beauty treatment, no matter if it's a manicure or it's microblading or a lash treatment, you sometimes need those kind of treatments just for the well-being feeling as well. I think we all deserve to take some time for ourselves. It's something we don't do too much because nowadays it's like you say, we work, we have so many jobs, we raise children. There's so many things involving our lives that we put ourselves on the hold. And what I'm trying to express with the whole Balear cosmetics companies as well, that I say that all the time on social media, take time for yourself, even if it's only on Friday evening, 1 or 2 hours, but take time for yourself because the time flies, years pass by. And after 20 years, you ask yourself, I did so much for all these people, for so many other people, but I haven't done too much for myself. I mean, my grandmother is a good example. When she heard that I was going to be a beautician, she couldn't believe it. She was thinking, you're going to be a beautician? Who would ever want a service like that? And once I did a study years and years ago, and I started to give her treatments. She loved it. She absolutely loved it, and she's very conservative. Never did anything for herself. I mean, back in the day, it wasn't really a thing to spend money on a service like this. But nowadays, times have changed so much. Like you say, we women, we work, we often are alone, single parent, and life passes by, and we need these kind of services to keep ourselves going as well, and to feel confident, to have a moment for ourselves and relax with it as well.
Well, and I mean, it's not just confined to women as well, because we're finding that there's a whole generation of metrosexual, as they call it, men. Men are now taking a lot more time and looking after themselves, and getting waxing done and taking care of their eyebrows and their facial hair. And I mean, it is what it is. And they're getting manicures and they're getting pedicures. They're not getting their nails painted, but they are taking care of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It goes slow, the process, but I have to say that more and more men indeed give themselves the time as well. I mean, a man, they have fingers as well. They work with them. They have to look pretty after it as well. It's so important. And I have to say that I do see the older generation coming for a lot of spa treatments. The younger generation, it takes a little bit more time, but I do think that within the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to change dramatically. I hope so, because it feels nice for everyone to have a spa treatment, not only for women, for everyone.
Well, and I think we really are starting to explore the idea that we have to talk about mental health. And we're seeing people talk about it straight across the board within the yachting industry as well, just in general, because people are experiencing so much more pressure in today's day and age to be better, to be perfect, to work harder, to accumulate more, and something like, as you said, even that hour per week of sitting down and getting your nails done, or a facial done, for men and women, that is a way to just sort of have somebody else look after you and pamper you and make you feel like you're special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially as well in the yachting industry. I remembered from the days when I worked on a cruise ship, the days are so incredibly long. You work, I mean, I know on cruise ships, it might be even a little bit less than in the yachting industry, but still the days are up to 12, 13 days. And I thought in the yachting industry, it's even longer. It can be up to 14, 15 days, hours a day, which is incredible if you think about it, and especially if you do it for quite a whole season. You completely, that afterwards, you feel tired, and especially you don't have too much time for yourself throughout the season if you all the time chartering, working with guests, working with owners, which are very high demanding. So after this, when the season is done, I always say this is the time, go for it, treat yourself, do something for yourself. It doesn't have to be a spa treatment. It can be a walk, it can be an exercise, some yoga classes, but do something for yourself, because it's you only have that little bit of time in the off season where you can treat yourself.
Yeah, no, it's very important. We need to, years ago we used to look after ourselves, and I think there was this push to sort of consume more and to achieve more, and we tended to put ourselves on the back burner, and collectively we are all speaking about looking after ourselves once again, and I think that's a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with semi-permanent makeup, now that's almost like tattooing, isn't it, of a sort?
It is, yeah. So there is a difference between permanent makeup and semi-permanent makeup. So the permanent makeup, what we used to see, it's more likely like a tattoo. So it's done with a needle, and it goes quite deeply into the skin. It sounds scary, but it's not too scary, I have to say. I mean, if you have tattoos, I don't, but if you have tattoos, you can relate. The one person is more sensitive than the other one, but it's done like a tattoo, meaning that it's quite deep into the deepest layer of the skin, meaning that those kind of permanent makeups, they don't fade. So if you look back in the day and you see some women having these old grayish or bluish kind of eyebrows, this was done years ago when the industry wasn't well, it was kind of progressing, but it was a lot of things they weren't discovered yet, meaning that those kind of ways of doing the permanent makeup, they're not something which I particularly like, because the difference between permanent makeup and semi-permanent makeup is that semi-permanent makeup doesn't stay in the skin for longer than 2 to 3 years. So a regular microblading treatment lasts between 1 and 2 years. In some cases 3 years, but I would call it lucky. It depends a lot of the skin. The benefit of this is that you can always change the shape of the eyebrow, meaning that when in 5 years eyebrows are back to the thin model, you can go back to have thin eyebrows. If it doesn't stay as long in the skin, up to 3 years, it doesn't change the color, which permanent makeup can do. If an ink stays too long in the skin, it starts to change color over years, because we're in the sun, we go in swimming pool with high chloride, we tan, we use products, meaning all these influences, they start to change the color over the years. So we don't want a pigment to stay inside of the skin too long for our entire life, because it doesn't end up very good. That's why I am very much convinced of the microblading concept, the semi-permanent makeup, because it's more of a healthier way. It's still a tattoo, but it doesn't change the color if it's done correctly. I do have to warn, there are obviously risks with it, which there is always with a tattoo. So I always advise, if you decide to have a permanent makeup or semi-permanent makeup treatment, really go out and look for an artist which is very highly skilled, which has a lot of experience, and which works with a very high quality product line, because there are always risks involved with it. And unfortunately, it's not a protected profession, meaning that everyone can become a microblading artist tomorrow. They can do a one-day training, which is insane. It is absolutely insane. But that's the way how the rule is over the entire world. So meaning that if someone works in a bank for 25 years and they think, wow, I want to do something different, I'm going to become a microblading artist, that sounds fun, and next week they can be a microblading artist and they can start to obviously work. And I can't say this often enough, you can't learn it within a one-day treatment. And there are just, I think, about 3 academies in the entire world which offer a longer training, where you are really forced to become good before you receive your certificate, which is one of the academies where I've done it. And I can't say this often enough, do your research, because there are risks involved with it. If it's done correctly, it's an amazing treatment. You will wake up every day and you will think, oh my God, they are just there. I don't have to do anything. But if it's not done correctly, it can be the opposite effect as well.
Well, that I think is my biggest fear. I mean, you know, first off, I wouldn't want to be 85 years old, waking up in the morning, looking like I have full makeup. I think there's a time in your life where you stop doing that kind of thing. I think you'd look quite comical to have a full face of makeup at 80 or 85 years old. I just, you know, you change. Do you know what I mean? So to put a permanent form of makeup on your face that at, say, for example, 30, you would be stuck with at 85 is absolutely ridiculous to begin with. But again, as you say, it's like going to get a tattoo. I'm afraid of needles, so I don't have any tattoos. And even the idea of a needle because of the nurse, that frightens me as well. A bit of a wimp when it comes to that. But, you know, the fear that when you're doing something such as this, even semi-permanent for 2 to 3 years, what happens if you've got someone that's doing it wrong? I mean, there is possibility for not only looking like a clown for the next 2 to 3 years, but as well, there's the possibility of infection, isn't there?
Of course, with a form of tattoo, there's always a risk on infection. So it's extremely, extremely important that the treatment is done in a licensed place, a location, which is one of these things in many countries where a lot of artists just take a corner and think, oh, I can get away with it. And a lot of them do. But there's always a high risk of infection, because you basically work with lymph and with blood. So I'm not saying that there is a lot of blood, but it's a small cut, it's a small wound. So there is a risk on infection. So that's why I always warn people, it's not to scare them. because like I said, it's a fantastic treatment, but be safe with it because it's in your face. No matter if it's a tattoo, anything, it's on your body, and an infection can be really, really ugly. So you don't want that. It's I, for example, don't offer the treatment in the high season when it's 38 degrees, because there's a higher risk of infection. So this is the time where I focus on other treatments and not too much on microblading, because except when I have someone who comes on holiday and they decide to do it on the last day and they go back to, let's say, Switzerland, somewhere in the mountains where there's hardly any sun, it's not a problem then. But if you're here and resident, I don't really offer it, because it's a risk, and you want to decrease risk as much as possible. And that's why I always warn clients. I always tell them up front all the risk what can happen. Even in a licensed facility, there's just always that risk what you have to bear in mind. The risk is very small, but it's likely like a wound. So you have to take a lot of care of it. So if you decide to do microblading, it's some sort of a commitment, especially the 4 weeks after your treatment. You have to take a lot of care of it. If you do that, the risk is very small. I haven't had any of my clients having any bad experience, but I'm doing everything correct. I warn them, I give them an aftercare kit. I do everything what you need to do to make the most safe treatment out of it and the most pleasant experience. But like I explained, there are quite a lot of artists out there who I don't think I'm sure they don't want to harm their clients, but it's just a lack of knowledge. If you have a one-day training, there's so much information and you can't pack that all in one day. There's so much you need to know. I'm a beautician, so I learned how does the skin work. But if you worked, I'm going back to the bank, if you work 25 years in a bank or somewhere else, you have an office job, you don't have that basic knowledge from the skin. So to then have a one-day training, you just don't learn everything. So do your research, look for before and after pictures. You can even, as a client, ask for the certificates and Google the academy where there's the training, so you really feel 100% certain about where you go. If you do that, then there shouldn't be a problem. If you feel confident in doing the treatment and you feel like you want to and you do your research, then it's in a normal situation, it's not a problem at all.
Well, the thing too is, if you walk into a place and it looks dirty, I mean, the fact is, right there, that should be a warning signal, because needles going into your face, if they're not cleaned, that is a recipe for disaster right off.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I do have to say that I only work with disposable tools, meaning that they are already sterilized. And this is another thing. A lot of beauty salons which offer microblading, which don't have the license, they often don't have a sterilization machine, which is a huge investment, but it's something very necessary if you don't work with disposable tools. And not every artist works with disposable tools, meaning they need this installation, which is very important as well. And as a client, you don't see these things. You don't know because you don't have the knowledge. And it's a sad thing that this is allowed to. And in one way, the rules and regulations in Spain are very strict. But then on the other way, with things like this, not only in Spain, it's worldwide. And you can become a microblading artist or even a tattoo artist within a day, which is, for me, it's incredible in not a positive way, but it's the way how it is. And that's why we just have to be cautious with things like this. It's not to scare people. We just have to be cautious and do our research. Don't look for the cheapest or for a bargain, because if you look for a bargain, most likely the pigments are quite cheap. They might come somewhere from China, and I'm not saying that the pigments aren't good, but you don't know where they come from, and they might be very cheap and with a very low quality. Everything which is cheap has been done in a cheaper way. Somewhere they spare money. If it's the quality of the pigments, if it's the packaging, it doesn't matter if it's the packaging, but often it's what is inside of the product. This is very often as well with skincare products. I'm not saying it's all the time, but you have to think about somewhere they have to save this money. So I'm trying always to explain as well, don't go for the cheapest. I'm not saying go for the most expensive one, but do not go for the cheapest in treatments like this. Spend a little bit more because it all goes inside of the product. You have to think there is an insurance which is inside of the price as well. It's the products, it's the license. There's so much to inside of this price, of this treatment price, which gives you the best treatment possible. If you save with all of these things, or let's say a microblading treatment cost is very cheap, it's half of the price what the regular price is. You have to think about it. Where did the person save the money? And we don't ask ourselves these questions, but we have to, because with treatments like this, there is a risk. There is a possible risk on infection. There is a possible risk on an allergic reaction as well. So I travel to my clients sometimes to do allergy tests. So for my on-demand treatments, I do patch tests for henna brows and as well for lash lifts. And because I'm an on-demand service for all my other treatments, I sometimes have to travel twice. And sometimes I have to travel 20 minutes just for a 5 minutes patch test. But I do this because it's safe. It's safe for the client. And I know that if I do this patch test, I feel secure, the client feels secure, and I know the client won't have an allergic reaction afterwards. If I don't do that, what happens when the client has a possible allergic reaction? That will affect my business at the end.
Yeah.
So I think that I rather spend a little bit more time for my clients and end up that no one is harmed and we both feel happy afterwards. That's the main goal which I have for my business.
Aside from semi-permanent makeup, as far as nails, for example, what are the trends? A few years back, you would see women coming out with these massively long nails, and they were in like weird colors, and the longer was the better. Literally claws. I could never understand how women could actually, pick up a pen and paper or type. What are the trends now with nails, for example?
I have to say that here in Spain, I would say that it's still the acrylics. They are still quite a trend here in Mallorca. I don't offer them because I was never a big fan of them because I don't say I have something against it. I had my times where I thought, oh, they look beautiful, they're nice and long. I just never liked the way that they were so thick. That was always something which disturbed me. They long, well, you can make them shorter as well. But they were too thick for my idea. So I offer only standard manicure and gel, so gel polish, which is a bit of the middle way. So it's a polish which lasts up to 2 weeks, which I find a perfect alternative because it's natural, but it stays much longer than a regular polish, which is great because a regular polish often only stays 2 to 3 to 4 days when you're very realistic. But the trends, they are pretty much, I think in Mallorca, you find pretty much everything. You find nail art, you find acrylics, you find the most natural treatments. Mallorca is so diverted. You have a lot of residents with the most beautiful and giant villas. Then you have obviously the yachting industry. You have the tourism. Tourists can be from anything. Tourists which come purely to go for a party experience. Then you have tourists which come for the hikes. So you have pretty much everything in Mallorca, and that's the same with the nail industry. Yeah. So, like I said, I don't offer, but you do get the acrylics, the extreme long ones as well. But it's something what you either like it. I always thought it would be very difficult if they are really long. Then it gets complicated with certain things in life. I was once actually at a bus station waiting for the bus, and there was a lady with extremely long, probably the longest I've ever seen, and she was trying to get the coins out of her wallet with her extremely long nails. And I was sitting there and watching it, and I was like, this must be a challenge, an everyday challenge. But I suppose you kind of got used to it as well. But it's not my thing.
No, mine either. One thing that I wanted to ask you as well is, we are all becoming really conscious about our impact on the environment. Your treatments, are they environmentally friendly? Are you moving in a direction that makes it more environmentally friendly?
Yes, I would say I do. Yeah, I do look that my treatments are environment friendly. I at the moment I work with I I offer facials, but I haven't offered it too much because I haven't had to request too much this season. But I worked before with organic skin lines. That's definitely something I do like. However, I have to say that I don't always only offer with organic skin lines. I tend to have two skin lines, one organic one and one non-organic one. The reason why is that the organic skin lines, they are great. They are, I'm a massive fan of them. However, they don't always give the quick results which some clients want. So I tend to have two lines so clients have the choice out of this, and I always explain the risks, the benefits of it, and the client can make the choice when it comes to obviously organic products. For microblading, the products are organic as well. And other than that, I would say I work environment friendly.
That's great news because we all are, looking towards the next 10 or 15 years, and we really have to be aware of the impact that we are making on the environment around us.
It is so important. It really, especially an island like Mallorca with such a high demand of tourists every single year. It's extremely important to, especially people who live here, to stick together and work on that every single day. It's the island where I am planning to grow old. So if you see it the same way, it's something you definitely should work on.
Yes, guaranteed. So you are available to go anywhere. So, for example, the season is over for this year for yachting, but of course the crew, there's bound to be crew that are wintering here. You can go anywhere. You can as well go on yachts in the summertime when the season starts up again. You are completely mobile.
I'm completely mobile. Yeah, I traveled to Poyensa, to everywhere around the island. Yeah, everywhere. I love it. It's for me. It's I think this year was the first year that I have seen so many places around the island. So I am very good for recommendations as well. That's included in my services. If you need any recommendations for restaurants, beaches, anything.
Perfect. Well, do you have a website?
I do have a website, which is like the company name. It's www.balearcosmetics.com.
Excellent. Well, we'll include that in all of the social media posting that we do for this interview, and as well on the YouTube channel, in case people are interested in getting your services. And maybe one day I will decide to take a little moment and look after myself. Do you know what? I grew up in a logging yard in northern British Columbia, Canada. So for me, beauty is just sort of something that is forced upon me because I happen to be born female. But I never really have taken the time that I probably should. And I have a lot of friends here that are very sort of aware of how they look, and they take very good care of themselves. And they just kind of shake their head at me because they have no idea how I've existed this long without actually. I've never had a facial in my life. I have never had a facial.
You should try it once. It's not only meant to obviously improve the skin. It feels incredible. It feels so relaxing. You can't imagine. You should try it, especially after the high season when it's so warm for so long. It's not the best thing for the skin. So I had quite a few clients who came who booked for a facial just to give like a proper deep cleanse after the months of having such a sweaty skin. You kind of feel that the skin gets dirty, the pores get clogged. So I can highly advise it. Yeah, it's relaxing. Do it. Give yourself some time.
Well, I might have to give you a phone call because, maybe it's time to start. I think the older we get, the more we're aware that, oh, wow, we're starting to get wrinkles, or, age in the environment is definitely starting to show on your skin and on your face. And what was fine when you were 20 isn't necessarily so great when you're older. And I'm not saying how old I am, but when you're older. Thank you so much for your time, Shelley.
Thank you as well. It was a pleasure.
And we look forward to putting this out there. And if I do happen to get any treatments, what I'll do is I will take a before and after picture for the audience out there and post that up on Yachting International Radio for a laugh.
That's for sure. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, you have a great day. That has been Balear Cosmetics with Shelly Heijlands. We're going to include all of her information. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This has been Ria for Yachting International Radio.